Welcome everybody. Don Giannetti with the Portrait 102 class today. We're looking at photographer David Bailey. David Bailey was one of those photographers that was kind of on the periphery when I was first starting this. I'd heard about him, but since he was a British photographer, a London photographer, I didn't know that much about him. But I did know that he was such a powerful force in the direction that we were all moving in commercial and especially beauty, fashion, and portrait photography. Very first time I really connected with David Bailey was a book that I bought called Mrs. David Bailey, which is photographs he did of his wife right after they were married. I believe most of these were done on honeymoon or right after the honeymoon. I'm not sure how long the marriage lasted, but it wasn't his first and it wasn't her last. So it's an amazing book. It is at Amazon. It's on the page here if you'd like to go and pick up a copy of it. I have two copies. I found one in a used bookstore that I just couldn't pass up the price. It was just too good. So I have two copies of Mrs. David Bailey. I have the paperback, which this is the cover from the paperback, and there's also a hardback which has a different cover. But what I liked about David Bailey was his approach is very super clean, in that, like many photographers that we study, every photographer has a way of working with the environment, and Bailey likes to have full control of his environment. In fact, of the images we're going to look at today, I think only one or two were shot on location, probably only one, because he likes the control. He also likes nothing to interfere with his photograph. He doesn't want a background. He doesn't want anything else going on other than the subject. So we have this very muted gray wall here. Here's an early fashion shot. I don't believe this is Jean Shrimpton, but he was a huge, in fact, I think he married her. He and Jean Shrimpton together changed the look of fashion photography and commercial photography for the foreseeable future. I mean, they just changed it. Two folks. A model who was not an apparent model. She wasn't what modeling agencies were looking for. And David Bailey was wild and wacky and totally off his meds, so to speak. And that changed it up. There was a movie called Blow Up, came out in the 60s, and Blow Up single-handedly launched probably more careers in photography than any photography school anywhere. It depicted a wild and crazy photographer surrounded by models and lots of free love and booze and partying and, you know, just a glamorous world. And wow, everybody wanted to be a photographer after that. It was pretty incredible. But what I like about this one, now we're going to look at some lighting here. We can see the light in the shot, correct? It's presenting right smooth on her face, so that makes me think it's right over the camera, right? And I'm absolutely correct, because there's the highlight right at the front of the boot. So that highlight is telling me the light's right over the camera. There's something else. The edge of the shadow of her fur here, or whatever's happening here with her arm, the edge of the shadow is extremely soft. That tells me it's a big light source. Same with this. It's a big light source. I'm going to bet 60-inch umbrella, maybe even bigger, but 60-inch umbrella for sure. And the light wraps around. I don't see any signs of fill or additional light at all. Bailey was a real proponent of side lighting. He liked the textures, and he liked the way light would present on the faces, the way it showed off the women's figures, and the way it created a dimensional look against these flat backgrounds. And these flat backgrounds are angled to and away from the light to give them a little bit of a gradient. Everybody sets their seamless up oblique to the camera, but you don't have to. Your seamless can tilt back, can sweep to the side a little bit, which means one part of the seamless is closer to the light than the back part, and you'll get a gradient across the seamless. That's easy to do. And yet very few people ever think to do that. They put the seamless straight at a 90-degree angle, or 90-degree angle to the camera, so it's oblique. Don't have to do that. Bailey would move his seamlesses to different angles. I don't know if this is strobe or window. I have a feeling it's strobe. Also lots of contrast in this particular shot. But one light from the side and a little bit of a gradient in the background. And again, we see the model's figure, we see her face beautifully, and notice what he did by bringing the hair forward. We get a perfect profile of her face lit against that dark hair. I love this shot. Absolutely love it. I love everything about it. I love the background, this very soft background. I'm going to guess, because of the size of the specular hair in her eye, that this is window light. Bailey's studio, if you get a chance to look at the videos, I think you'll get some shots of his, or some visions of his studio. Bailey's studio always has very large windows, 2-story giant windows, which he uses a lot for lighting. He knows his way around strobes, believe me. But there's something magical about that big studio with all that light, just doing the available light, tilting the background to and fro from the light and getting these gradients, and just great big soft light. So when you look at the size of that, you can see. How can you do this? Well, the biggest possible scrim you can make. So if you can make a 12 by 12, go for it. But the biggest possible scrim that you could make would get this kind of light. Notice how the light it doesn't really wrap, it just washes all the way around here. But once it gets on the dark side, it doesn't do much of anything. It just is a huge, you can see it in the shoe. That's a big specular for whatever's over there on a shoe that's curved. That's a big specular. If that was just a softbox, that specular would not be that big. I believe this is Shrimpton with the neck, and I believe, it's been a long time since I've recognized Jean Shrimpton in all of her shots, but just a fun shot in the studio. You can see the catch light in the eyes, and you can also see that it's a one light setup. You see that single shadow dropping down there. He's got light on the background to make it white and a light on the subject. And no, this was not photoshopped. I like the feathers here, and I like the way the head comes down here, and then she sort of mimics it back here. See that? Kind of mimics it back there. Model is turned sideways to the camera. Now, there's so much right about this picture, I've got to share this with you when you talk about posing. Number one, notice how she's very tall. She's not slumping, or schlumping, as I like to say to my daughter. She's not schlumping. She's got a nice straight backbone. She's got both legs up there, but one leg is slightly back from the other, so we see both. Sometimes it drives me crazy when I see legs right together and one hides the other one and it looks like one leg. Let one slip back just a little bit. In this case, it's just a little bit to see that back leg. The light presenting from up above is single, and it's right about here. Notice the little slight shadow right there. And it's brighter on this side of the face, falling to darkness over here. Same with the legs over here. Large light source brought in pretty darn close. And we got to look at the little hair. We get a shadow off that hair, so we know that light is coming right down there. The background, interesting that I see this in David Bailey's, John Swannell's pictures, many English photographers. For years, I would notice that the paper, the seamless paper, has texture in it, possibly from lots of humidity. And the model is close enough to the background that the texture comes out. For me, this would have driven me crazy. I would never have shot with this texture. I would move the model far enough out that this went out of focus. But for a lot of the photographers of the day and today, that texture actually adds to the shot, and Believe me, Bailey left it in for a reason. It wasn't like he didn't see it or he was sloppy about it or anything. He knew exactly what he was doing and why. So again, one big light. She's far enough away from the background where the shadow is being very soft down here. What is this? Could be that window again too. The lovely Kate Moss. One light, high, presenting down with her chin up into it. Another Bailey thing. Lovely wild hair. What kind of light is it? Could be a beauty dish. See how it presents right here? How dark under the nose it is. How dark right there it is. See this? This could be a beauty dish. Look how fast it goes to shadow, and look how even it is across the plate of the face. Could be a beauty dish, probably right about there. Could it be something else? Yeah, it could be. But I would, if I was redoing this, I would do it with a beauty dish, and I feel like it would be pretty darn close to the beauty dish. The way it's presenting on the lips also. One little highlight on the tip of the nose. Yeah, that's a beauty dish, right about there. I'd bet anything. Background, separate light. Separate light. And notice how it's bright back there. So the hairs are just getting a little bit lost in that bright background. So that bright background for the hairs to get a little bit lost but still be there, all these little wild blonde hairs, that means the background's about a stop brighter than he's shooting her face. Just about a stop. More than a stop, we're going to lose them. At a stop and a half, you're going to lose these hairs. They're not going to be there. They're going to flare around it. So just about a stop. And again, beauty dish, and he's got her face tilted up into it. Bailey was one of the first photographers who used the beauty dish. Just a spectacular shot. Lots and lots of contrast. And this is, I'm sure, what he saw was this beautiful pale face and this super dark hair. And he saw the graphics of it. And how to make this face stand out, that's what you do. Model's got her shoulders down. Her chest is coming this way just a little bit, and she's got her chin up and towards the light. And it makes a very dynamic photograph. Mick. Oh, I can't get now. Mick. And with the fur around his face and the whole bit. But what's interesting is look at how deep the shadows are. And look at how deep this shadow is here. Why do you think he did that kind of lighting? My opinion, he did it to accent Mick Jagger's lips. In fact, the entire shot is built there to exaggerate that part of his face. Mick Jagger has great big lips. Let's show them off. Let's make that the feature. I love the texture everywhere. How it was lit? Well, we got an idea of how it was lit by right there. A very small specular in the eye. So I'm gonna say a beauty dish at a bit of a distance. The distance gives that sharp edge. Right there. That's not a real soft edge. That's kind of sharp. That tells me the light's farther away. Right in here too. Look at that. That's almost a defined edge. That tells me the light's far enough. That's pretty far away. But it still has a little bit of diffusion in the edge, and that tells me it's not a single hot light. I mean, a single naked, 6-inch reflector. That would be almost too much here. So I'm going to go with a beauty dish or a large reflector, a 14-inch reflector or something along those lines. Jack. Everybody knows Jack. So what's interesting to me about this Jack Nicholson, we get this very clean white background, but notice how he goes from lit to dark. Just lit to dark. And then the camera's up a little bit. Up, so looking down on Jack a little bit. We're seeing the top of his head. Subtle little things like that's what you got to look for. We're seeing the top of his head. We're not looking straight across at him. We're definitely not looking up. Coming down just a little bit. Single, a bit of a larger one than previously. On Mick, we have this very small little highlight. But on Jack, kind of much bigger highlight. So this is probably a bit of a bigger umbrella or something. I like the way the light picks up on this side of his nose very much. when you take a look at the highlights in the eyes, you really open up the eyes, you can see what's going on here. And then what I also like is how the light catches this side of the face, but comes around on this side of the face to give us Jack Nicholson. I'm not convinced that we would see Jack as who he is so recognizable if we split light him here. If all we saw was this side of his face. I think we needed to see his other eye and this cheek to give us the idea, to give us Jack Nicholson. Beautiful, soft studio shot. Bailey loves to do amazing, interesting croppings when he's shooting editorial. Here's one. He's got the girl bending down to fit the frame. I would probably guess, looking at the light, probably the studio with window light. Lots of window light. That's my guess. Could you do this shot with strobe? Yes. Notice how the shadows kind of sharp and defined here, but it goes off to nothing in about 2 feet. That tells me that the light is huge in relation to her. So that the light has to actually, she's stopping it right here because you're very close to her leg and her foot right here. But as you get back here, you're able to see the light again. And so the light's wrapping all the way around. So what source could we use for this? Well, this could be one of the times you bring out that 86 parabolic. Big parabolics are a staple of studio fashion. The other thing that makes me think it's either window or parabolic is look how even she's lit all the way up. She's leaning forward towards the light, so she's going to get a little bit more of it here. But look how even all the way through here. That's a big light source. Another one. Notice how dark the shadow goes and how beautifully lit the highlights are. And notice how very carefully, just like on Jack Nicholson, he keeps that eye. Doesn't let that eye go. Now everything else in here is super dark. And yet the background's got almost a glow to it. You feel that? Kind of feel it right in. It's almost got a glow to it. So she is super dimensional against that background. And that background is not fighting for our attention. Our attention's totally placed on her. Notice her back. She's not hunching or smooshing down. She's nice, got a nice carriage right there, got her chin up, and notice he cropped right into the top of the head. Notice how many times he does that. Jagger. Editorial fashion. He'll cut right into the top of the head. That is not a problem. Gene Shrimpton. I like this because I like the way these two images work together. Gene's a little bit more lit from the front. Notice the semi-sharp shadow. It's a deep shadow, but it's got a nice soft edge to it. I got a little highlight right here. I'm gonna bet it's an umbrella, like a 43 or something like that. Umbrella or a beauty dish, in fairly close. But what makes me think it's not a beauty dish is that her elbow is not blowing out in front of her face here. That would be tough for a beauty dish, because the distance the beauty dish would be so close that bringing her elbow out 10 inches from her face would drastically change the exposure. While her elbow is bright, notice how it fades back here. Do you notice that? Look at her neck versus her elbow. So the light we do know is close because inverse square law, right? It falls off faster the closer the light source. So we know all that. But what I love is how the light presents to the face right there. Shadow from her arm, shadowing her hair back there, just very subtle. Really love this shot. This is one of those David Bailey shots that always stuck with me. I just really thought this was cool. Great crop. Brave crop, and amazing lighting, just beautiful lighting. What he's doing here with the light is he's lighting up the background. So he's got his subject standing here in front of a white background, and he's just lighting up the background. Then he's using either a fill card or an umbrella to this side to light her up. Shooting then at the smooth lighting that she is presenting, not the wall, and letting the wall go a stop over. Why do I say a stop over? Because we maintained all this mesh in here. And if it goes more than a stop over, folks, you start to lose this detail. So if this is 2 stops brighter, you're gonna lose detail. It's just gonna flare through the little thin threads. So let's say we make the background, ambient reading on the background, F11. Then we take an ambient reading on the subject, F8, and then you shoot it at F8. So she's nice, she's lit, and the background, since it metered F11, is now a stop over. It's 1 stop over. And notice how that background feeds back on her face, right here, right on her neck, on her gloves, right in here, right here on her chest. It's just so subtle. It's just really, really pretty. I love it. Shrimpton again with, as you can see, that big studio window right there. As you can see Mr. Bailey. So huge studio and a background that's a little bit brighter over here and a little bit darker over here, but not much. When I ran it in Photoshop, it was only about 4 or 6 points different. It's super even. Now, how do you do that with a window light? If you put the seamless at a 90-degree angle from the window, it's going to be brighter on this side than it is on this side because the light's going to fall off across the face of the seamless. Well, one of the things you can do is turn the seamless so that the light is not falling off so much, so that you're bringing this part of the seamless closer to the window, and you get a much more even light fall off. So the camera's here, Gene's here, the big window is here, and this falls off slightly, because if it was turned this way, it would be brighter here and darker here, because over here is farther from the light. Do you see that this is well, it's that far from the light, and that area right there is that far from the light, and the difference is not much. So you can turn your backgrounds to accept the light more. One of my favorite shots. Also, check out the eyes on the shot when you get a chance to look at it. You'll see a lot going on in there. This was one of David Bailey's few location shots, and shot for a magazine in Britain, and I don't know what magazine it is, but this is this young lady was 6 feet 3 inches tall. She was a model and a fashion designer, and he shot her on the streets of London. And here's David and Gene in their favorite photograph together, and back in the day. And you can see the light right here. One big light up to the left coming down, presenting a nice little soft shadow here, presenting beautifully across Shrimpton's back, making everything work. And of course, again, that really clean background. So my takeaway from David Bailey's always been the really clean background, and then the dimensionality of the people by not using much fill. Another thing about David Bailey's shoots is that the models are moving. Notice the hair, she's moving. I don't know what she did before this, but I can tell you she's moving all over this rack. Look at the hair, Kate's moving. She's moving here. He's playing with his this Eskimo jacket or whatever he's doing. There's a lot of movement, and Bailey's catching the movement. Look, she's bending down and throwing her hair to one side, or possibly there's a fan on it. So he's working with her. It's not one of those like some photographers where the subject just has to hold real still. In this case, he's letting them move and be animated, and you'll see that in some of the videos where he's shooting. He does like some animation to his pictures. So that's David Bailey, and I hope you enjoy David Bailey and are as influenced as almost everybody in the 60s and 70s was by Mr. Bailey and his kind of freewheeling approach to photography, letting the subject stand out and be their own, and just a really interesting guy. A lot of people thought he was arrogant. I never thought he was arrogant. I thought he was pretty sure. Just, the guy was just darn self-assured that he knew what he was doing. So, David Bailey, folks, thanks. Talk to you soon.